which is a book that my therapist lent me for the 2 weeks between sessions, and it's basically just different people. Are we just going to ignore the traffic? We're just going to ignore the traffic. I'm really bad at ignoring the traffic. Okay, so this book is Been There Done That Try This, which is a recount of own voices, autistic people, or mentors who are sharing advice, or not even advice, who are sharing their experiences on different topics that, according to a survey that they did before writing this book, that a lot of autistic people deal with, like anxiety and relationships and stuff like that. So I've been reading this for a couple of weeks, and I thought I would just keep skimming over it now. So it says it's edited by Tony Atwood, who you may have heard me talk about before. He's a really renowned autism specialist and psychologist, doctor. He's really good at communicating his findings and his knowledge, his immense knowledge about autism spectrum disorder. I'm also going to say that this book uses the word Asperger's and Aspies, an Aspies Guide to Life on Earth, and I don't really agree with the term Aspies. It's been come to my attention recently through other autism advocates that it was a term used by Nazis. It was a Nazi doctor who was deciding who could live or die, basically, by who was worthy for society or not. And so we've kind of moved away from that term now, but also it kind of makes it feel like Asperger's is different to autism, but it's not. It's just another way of talking about the same spectrum of issues. So an Aspies Guide to Life on Earth, I will just use the term Aspies anyway. Where I think about it, I will just use the word ASD. I'll use the letters ASD and ASD Guide to Life on Earth, but I don't always remember to do that, even though I would like to remember to do that. ADHD. So it says ASD mentor advice on overcoming daily stresses from Temple Grandin, Leanne Holiday Wiley, Anita Lesko, Dr. Stephen M. Shaw, Jennifer Cook O'Toole, Lars Berner, and many more. And it's edited by Tony Atwood, Craig R. Evans, and Anita Lesko. Includes recommendations and commentary from Tony Atwood, and those bits are my favourites. So this is the book that I'm reading at the moment, and it's just it's not what I thought it would be. So I thought it would be, sorry this intro was so long, but it's about a topic and then a discussion of what that person has to say about that topic, which is usually, this was my experience and I urge you to be careful. Instead of, you could do this, it's like, this is what I've done, which is slightly different, but anyway, it's not as helpful as I thought it would be, but I do just want to read out this one line. So, on this page is about overcoming poor self-esteem, which apparently I have. So, it's about the impact of ASD on self-reflection, and it goes on for a page and a half about how difficult it is and how for people with ASD to look introspectively and think about their emotions and what's happening with them. And then there's this one line which says, some adults with an ASD can actually be overly self-reflective and dwell excessively and pessimistically on their inner thoughts and feelings. And girl, if that ain't me. But that's me. So I was reading all of this going, that doesn't really that doesn't really resonate with me. And then there's just that one line that says, but also the opposite. So, yeah. So, I've got my, let's make the noise. Bonk. Bonk. Yeah. Alright. So, without any further ado, I've had plenty of ado. Let's skip to something that I want to read about. Damn, no one ever got me anxiety, more self-esteem, accepting wrong with change, living with meltdowns. I've got me to be living with meltdowns. Got to living with meltdowns. Living with meltdowns. 72. Percentage of respondents living with these issues, 83%. And it causes ranking of issue-based stress caused 87%. Right, so emotional loss, a little bit harder, at low level, and where I can escape the needs of constant interaction with the pill frags. Perfection, setting broad extended weekends, instead of several days in a row. So the change to my routine is kept at a minimum, staying involved in activities. It's a good way to keep attention from growing inside of me, and then regains to limit instead of Saturdays, stuff that I get stuck under. That's true, me out of the run, caused by focusing too much on one thing, for instance, movies, the television, writing. Some video games on weekends only. I listen to a little music and make sure to get back practically throughout the day. Place me getting away from the computer or portable electronic devices reminds me that there is a real world out there. Proper says getting enough sleep, mental stress management, while you're cutting food and limit unknown. Like the other day, caffeine has been a big source of engines in the past, and that I've drastically reduced when I discovered that I'm much less benefits than over. It's regular with the 15-minute walks several times a day, taking a quick nap. During the day can make a lot of things better, but I also think that it was regular myself over a lot. Should I have always kept away from others and generally started out in albums where I like throwing pillows at the floor, and I think it's time to love because it has love. Oh my god, I have meltdowns all the time. If having a meltdown is doing things that are like throwing pillows at the floor, or like, yeah, I do. I will throw things across the room when I'm by myself, but I didn't really. Is it weird that I never associated that with being an autistic meltdown? Probably. I mean, I do it when I'm having these weird anxiety, panic, not really panic, it's different. I'm just having some revelations in my mind right now. Okay, anyway. But see, the book is good, right? Because it's making me realize things, even if I'm not specifically enjoying the book itself. Interesting. Or nothing is damage often goes missing out, but I realize that's not the method of release. I don't know about it. No one is injured. Sometimes I used to scream out driving alone in my car because sometimes I used to scream when I was driving alone in my car because traffic frustrations would get the better of me. I found that this is gonna sound dangerous, but it's not. That when I'm driving, if I'm cranky, overwhelmed, overstimulated, I don't know what the word is, but it helps to just scream as loud as you can, because in the car with no one else there, no one else can hear you because you're in a little box plummeting along, and it's really freeing to do that. I've been told to go and scream at a waterfall. Like, you go for the hike, you go to the little lookout, you look at the waterfall, and then you just scream as loud as you can. But I always think that would be very unsettling for somebody else walking to the waterfall, and I don't want to do that. That's not something I want to do. But in my car, it's fine because there's absolutely no damage to anyone or anything around me. It's just my lungs filling with air and my voice box straining. Like, it's just me, and I think that that's important for me. Very important, not to let my meltdowns affect other people. that's something that I resonate with. I don't want to put anyone through any sort of stress ever. I don't want to pile on to other people's stress. I just want to deal with it on my own. I just don't want anyone else to know. And it's not that I don't want them to know, it's that I don't want them to be affected. Because I get affected, and I don't want to affect anyone else. Yeah, right, okay. I got all the super fun with scopes in my life, the trash today, so that you make any more than my own when I need to but they all learn momentary, get less fruit, less intense, that will be under that everybody thought it was just finding a way to cope, because sometimes each person will have to figure out as soon as you're around for me, they're from running before I start the day, but for about half an hour to getting fixed for the day. I found that recently I've not been very good. I've been in a lot of meltdown lately. I've been in a shutdown, not a shutdown, a burnout recently, and I've found pacing helps. Like if I'm waiting for the microwave to heat up my pre-cooked dinners, I will pace back and forth the whole time. I had to make a phone call, and I was pacing that entire phone call. I was walking. I was actively pacing, and I didn't know I paced. I didn't realize that pacing was a stim that I did until now. I wasn't deliberately like trying to stim. Like sometimes I will be like, okay, I need to do something to stim, and I'll get a toy or I'll get the camera out or something. But the pacing was an unintentional one, which I thought was interesting and new. Okay, I will keep interrupting you, so don't think this is a silent reading video anymore. Okay. Next thing you know, they'll be crying soon. You'll know that everyone notices difference when I make up something each person will have to figure out a certain for me from running a stop by walking in circles, all listening to my iPod for about half an hour to get focused on the day ahead if I'm about to get this done to myself earlier. Their day really does seem to go better because I approach the day coming that I feel so rushed at the door. Some days I can make things happen. I find myself needing that pacing time again to get myself refocused. I find myself needing that pacing time again to get me refocused. Given that everyone seems to have different triggers for meltdowns, it's important to try lots of different ways to help you. It is important to try lots of different ways to help you yourself regroup. Once you find that you're refocused, life will get better. Meltdowns happen and everybody has them. Whenever I do autism training with autistic people, they recognize the meltdown can relate to their own experiences, totally losing it through the excess of adrenaline. As far as I can make out the difference between autistic and autistic people, excess of adrenaline, and there are three. There's an explosion of violence, the flight response, and running away, the flight response, the becoming totally passive and blank death, the play dead response, and I think that there is equally serious and indicate that sometimes it's terrified beyond coping, even if the flight response is serious for onlookers. I developed play dead moments later in my teens as they have tried to kind of response to leave it out of people. And then they still get me, then I 50% of the next, but always the main people just said, please, not as if it's limited, but still for the nearly adult. A couple of times a day, and close my hands have not happened over a decade now. The last stage was getting better and better as it is. But no, I feel like I need to explode his meltdowns. I used to be able to plan to regulate myself to control exactly these children. Someone uncome to societies that don't be aware of this. I did use to shout tantrums as a kid. I did use to shout tantrums. I did use to shout tantrums. But now I'm seeing them not as tantrums at all, but as meltdowns because people would not leave me alone. I remember one time specifically, I was having a really bad meltdown. I'd thrown a brick at the front door. I was so angry. I'd locked myself in the room and I was crying and just staying alive. I wouldn't have been very old, and my siblings came around to my window and sang to me. I think, in retrospect, that is the most awful thing they could have done at that time. They didn't know that. They were just trying to make me feel better by singing "Smile, don't you know God loves you?" Like, fuck off. It still upsets me to this day, but now I can laugh about it. Then I was screaming. I was very upset, and I was a kid. I was just a kid. Anyway, we're all just kids. We're all kids. We were kids. Alright. I was led to reach my little good excited little free lines, and I don't have to worry about it. No exciting deal. I feel excited. I was light up. You jump, and I was about a part-time ladies dead. I also negotiated a extra stretch, but about this. I'll be one constantly pretty there. Recommend part-time flexible work. Reading this book is giving me, I guess, flashbacks, trauma responses to things that I had kind of forgotten about, I guess. I think that's also a meltdown when I was older. Everyone was like, "You've taken too much zinc," because I was just having a complete meltdown after I finished reading this book. Thank you, John Green. that you are not burdening them as much as you think, and that they take personal pleasure in watching the change come over you. They sit and do something like you see and under them. But it seems like a powerful effect on you until it comes later. But that will purpose for I just let it sort of sweat the little pennies that let's let it be. The things that need to list good for things just really familiar with it. Every day is better than here for them and still do that. They get much less to grab for the line that recognize what is coming in out of a photo when I say I really didn't have to. As begins of today, experience better personal opinion as well as touch importance, but it's that I respect this side. I'm not to taste it all on it, especially the reaction of the reaction of the rather that is so there's a problem is the I think the dating is vessel or double if that fast but just if should I should so I do enjoy the ledge of the two people partners surrounding and phrase in the conversation about this become that a moment then will have that one item that is someone about things that is because going to the grain of test assembly things some of them on the phone and somebody's doesn't mean I don't gonna bend them down and the thing about autism is that meltdowns and shutdowns can be so unique to the individual, so I'm not really sure if what I'm experiencing is a meltdown or a shutdown or anything because everybody who recounts it is different, but they've identified that in themselves as a similar vibe of thing, I guess. So how would I know? How would I know what's a panic attack? How would I know what's a meltdown? How would I know what's a shutdown? How would I know if it's different every time? That's not something I can stack. I guess any extreme reaction could be a meltdown. Question mark. I don't know. Anyway, make those gently pushes about that best factors of the brother. I'm cold. I'm very cold right now in this video. I don't know if it's okay. Charlie knew as a child exchange at least perfect occasions. Paths come to my parents and usually storms blew over. Quickly to tell us that I have been subject to Martin's longer lasting albeit frequent emotional eruptions. Lens to being a child as a person, but lens to manage cutting conceptually. For example, when I go out to the bread zone, I have myself with less than a wide bird, which is going to move me miles later after rush hour. If I take the backwards, if I say let us have to have I put aside my money to buy it. That was my stomach rumbling, not a car, not traffic that time. Okay, as it was dominated by it's good news, but it was more subject to mention the sense of security life for the change loss of job at the end of related to and their infection of pleasure of issues of the when you went up or bed with them, they seem to the living way. If me better was a variation of that stage, which was being disappointed in myself. Becoming myself good at turning. Most fortunate the point of display, but if I lose more than one grievance against the other, you may have come with the blind rage to recommend an animal can sleep and sit together. Oh fuck, I read that wrong and I thought it said striker. This one time when I was a kid, I went to a therapist. By kid, I mean I was a young adult, and I was talking about these intrusive thoughts that I had about violent tendencies towards the barking dog because the noise was making me angry, and they said you need to accept your thoughts, and I was like, you want me to fucking kick the dog? Like, I was so upset. I was not understanding this therapy at all, and they were like, no, that is not what I meant at all, and I'm like, well then how the fuck am I supposed to accept the thought if I'm not supposed to? You know, if that's not what you meant, what did you mean? And then they couldn't explain themselves, and I had a tantrum, I had a meltdown, I've had meltdowns, I've had many meltdowns in doctors' offices and in therapists' offices, and what I fail to understand is how they go, oh, you're a fascinating mental case, instead of saying, oh, you've just got Asperger's, you've just got ASD, you've just got autism. Like, that's just what they couldn't diagnose me, they didn't know, I didn't know, nobody knew. How did they not know? There needs to be more education. So autism advocates are doing a wonderful job because I guess it's suffering, so much suffering. Alright. Being extremely changed aware as many as we started about them, but these events are blame me fatal, you suffer as the light of the playing is the misfortunes to come there's the outward meltdown where all has to you may be overcome with the blind sleep or sit still and try to strike out at the one who has done you wrong, right? Yeah. Right. Sometimes with both these mental and some episodes of it alternate within this episode, but I didn't lore episodes of witness even because blanks are human condition. Have you heard of them? Breathe deeply and entertain your first grade teacher was right, it helps. Again, you must collective doing energy and make a mud, but don't hurt yourself. Commute with nature. This is a calming effect, contemplating their own supernatural world with a good perspective, except that sometimes the silence goes in the wrong way for me and causes further meltdowns. I've had a lot of meltdowns by myself that I've not had to express to anyone else because I was by myself, but I was still very much having meltdowns. There was this one Christmas, I think it was Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, it was around Christmas time, and I was really hyped up, and somehow I got left at my house alone and I went mad. You know what else is really bugging me? What else is going to cause my next meltdown? It's this app that's telling me to drink water because I paid it to. I paid this app to make me set healthier routines and all of those things, and I paid good money that I need now to get this app to help me, and all it does is send me a push notification that triggers an anxiety response within me. And I don't want to turn it off because I don't want to waste my money, but I'm going to have to turn it off because it is aggravating. It is aggravating me, and that is just money I've lost. This is the ADHD tax, my friends. Alright, anyway, stop running your book. Alright. Although I never felt that I had a problem with bad observant, I may well say that I surely did, and that I can. Still, if I let myself when I read the description of what meltdown really is, I just laugh and say, I kind of love new typicals that you get what I see. That we do it more often and that we feel these things more deeply. Because of this, we need to be an appropriate way to express ourselves. One thing that has helped. Heck, I know a lot of neurotypicals that do that. What makes it so unique to those of us with ASD is that fact that we do it more often and we feel these things more deeply. So other people, neurotypicals, also have meltdowns, and they do, but we have them often at less significant traumas, seemingly less significant traumas. Like it mentions back here, neurotypical people have meltdowns because of divorce or death or something like that, which I know I do. Not that I've been divorced, but death is definitely a big meltdown trigger for me. But anyway, it's a big meltdown trigger for everyone. But we feel these things more deeply. That's interesting to me because we feel the same deep emotional response to the painters outside being noisy as we do to getting divorced from a lifelong spouse. Apparently. That makes sense to me because although I've never been divorced, I really react badly and strongly towards things that other people don't tend to worry about. And I think the traffic outside the window is slowly becoming one of those things. All because they go, oh, it's fine, and then it's fine for them, but for me, I'm like, it's fine, and then I'm grating my teeth, and it's not fine. The traffic is not fine. I need a soundproof room. I've already got two really heavy, I was gonna say blankets, but they're curtains, two really heavy curtains blocking my window, and yet example, a restaurant point of experiences such as having to wait in line at further tension points. Eventually, the senses may go to 100 if full burn about that occurs in those you know well. In a situation behaviors that indicate them to your increasing stress. Many people have an ASD difficulty monitoring their internal moods and stress levels and may be so if the signs 180 to 100 degree range into the thermometer, while others may recognize the signs from 40 to 80 are valuable. Which is better pulse rate. These are new part of sports. So okay, maybe I should do it. Maybe I should get my language back. Still listen to take notice of and other people pointing out to you that you're stressing. Right. So it's not a real. Okay, we're running out of time. I guess I'm just gonna get it to redo because I'm not done. Alright, I really need to find a way to get my video to record more than just half an hour because these videos aren't long enough and then I have to focus on too many things at once. Maybe I need a new something. I can't afford a new camera. I just need to find a way to hack it so that it doesn't do that. Stop recording. Doesn't stop recording. Alright, we got 20 seconds. I'll do mouth sounds so that it's easier to cut together later. And as being minutes of identified, or stairs love for a big, and as being minutes of identified, the ASB minutes of identified, and we're recording again. And stress causes expression emotions, energy close popping up below the mouth and glands, and there's just repeating crashes due to too many particles happening at the same time. Private mouth will have been accumulation of stress and a single component psychological and sociological signs of increasing stresses. Rapid quality of actions and its tensions increases can be released as lack of fluency, movement, and notable negative thoughts, as well as increasing intolerance, agitation, and desire to escape the choice in the psychological active breathing, unpure process, and perspiration, and that close to such cleansing can be human and flight or respite response strategies to reduce. I already read that. No wonder I was confused just then. Okay. Away from dangerous influence such as knives and other cases, the effect on other people on meltdown is extremely unpleasant experience for the person with ASD, but it can also be a very frightening experience. They can be confused by a person with ASD experiencing extreme agitation that they may seem excessive for the situation. They may not know what is to do, help, and will need to have their own recovery strategies. It's very important to communicate with others the warning signs of an imminent meltdown and make sure that they are aware of signs of stress at the moment and to decide together what each of they can do to help the various levels of stress and meltdown encountered. Because we need to know that to actually make the situation with just explain what you accept. They need to realize that you're such a state of physical clear and explain it. More stress they may need. It seems obvious to us, I guess it was helpful, especially. I think that's a very interesting one, is that when I'm having a meltdown and other people are like asking why. So my sister often, when I'm having a full meltdown, she just wants to understand. And and then the more I talk, the more agitated I get because I'm trying to explain things that I don't fully understand and it seem obvious because I'm having physical reactions to how unhappy I am. And if somebody asks why you're unhappy, that it takes longer, it takes a couple of days for me to realize what my meltdown was about. Whereas in the moment, I'm just like, because I'm very unhappy and I'm just like, nothing's good. And I'm having I don't know what it is that I say because I don't remember things, right? And the things that I do remember are the things that I have to process, which takes time. I recently had a bit of a argument with, not an argument, but I needed an explanation for something that my boyfriend said. And I asked it late. I asked it like 24 hours later. I was like, what did you mean by this? And he's like, I don't even remember saying that. He's like, I don't remember what I said or what our conversation was. Because it was late at night. And it was while we were going to bed. And it was semantics, obviously. I misread sarcasm is what happened, but I didn't know that is what happened until later, so I thought he was being genuine, and so I acted accordingly, and then later I was like, that's a little offensive to me, and he was just joking. I just need to realize that he's just joking, and that there's not always a deeper meaning to the joking. Like, he's not joking because he actually means it, he's joking because he actually means the opposite of it, which is just, I thought I didn't have that sort of problems, but I do, I really do. Anyway, this is an autism video, not a silent reading video. Okay, affecting other people, right? And agitation, and I think that was a meltdown too. I think I've been in and out of meltdowns during this burnout. I think I'm using the lingo correctly. Okay. also need to be cautious about the imposition of any consequences, such as specific items in the meltdown cycle that may exacerbate the situation when you have recovered from the meltdown. It's important that you understand the art of apology. You may be feeling better, but the neurotypicals can still feel upset, needing time to implement their own methods of recovery. Expect some type of apology or signs for remorse, and you should be grateful for by restoring the relationship, such as you offering help with the household chores together. You can then explore why the meltdown occurred and learn from the experience and work out how to avoid future meltdowns in the same circumstances, if you know what those circumstances were. Alright, so that's gotten me to Living with Meltdowns chapter. So it actually takes quite a long time to read this book, I'm noting. Let me just skim through and see if there's anything else I really want to know about. And I might just skip straight to Tony Atwood's. Alright. Overcoming Depression, I've already read. Keeping Friends, I've already read. Living with Personal Management Issues. Living with Personal Management Issues. I don't even understand what that means. Let's go to Living with Sensory Issues. 105. 105. 105. 105. Alright, Living with Sensory Issues. Let's go straight to what Tony has to say, because honestly I find his to be more helpful. Oh look, he's got many pages. Alright, good. Alright, Tony Atwood's advice on living with sensory issues. It's autism including hypersensitivity when put a diagnostic criteria for ASD. American Psychological Thus, the sensory sensitivity evaluated during diagnostic is recognized by clinicians and academics as one of the defining characteristics of ASD. This will subsequently lead to the development of conceptual models of sensory sensitivity and effective treatment. Today, we do not really know why sensory just goes in as a association with ASD. Location is good news that adults with ASD have a great opportunity to create and maintain a lifestyle that minimizes experiences and statistics. Greater maturity enables the person to temporarily enjoy the experiences rather than have an ability to escape from them. It seems that all the sensory systems can be affected in ASD, and often the person has various levels of sensitivity, and not one but several sensory systems. The most common is auditory sensitivity with tactile, visual, olfactory, and there can also be sensitivity to disturbance of proprioception, a sense of the position of the body using information from internal signals and vestibular systems, sense of balance and orientation. It is simply hypersensitivity. There can be hypersensitivity, especially a lack of perception of a reaction to some of the sensory expressions, pain and temperature. There can also be a temporary fluctuation. The same experience is perceived as less or more intense from day to day, or after fragments of focusing parts of the detail rather than all sensory agnosia, difficult interpreting from which this process comes. And there can also be a desire to, oh god, my hand is aching. Maybe this is more extreme pain. Maybe I'm hypo to pain. There can also be a desire to experience more intense sensations that may be unpleasant to neurotypical, such as, or maybe I'm hyper and it's not bad, but it hurts more than it should. Neurotypical, such as the taste of feeling, exception, or spicy or hot food, the reactions to sensory experience may perceived as eccentric. Neurotypical sense are recognized characteristic of sensory profile. ASD is also associated perceptions as seeing images in association with a specific sense of paranoia, face blindness that is difficulty recognizing people's faces. There can also be an association with this scotopic sensitivity or Irlen syndrome, a visual perception dysfunction that affects reading abilities by distorting printout their visual perception of the environment. Thus, sensory experiences can be extremely intense, confusing, and frightening for those to cope with sensory injuries. The ASB members have provided several personal strategies for coping with sensory issues. This chapter you may find that you benefit from having an assessment of your sensory profile based on you could provide valuable information on which of your systems are affected. You may also find it helpful to read literature. See the end of the chapter for suggestions on the sensory sensitivity associated with ASD. Design assessment instructions for sensory sensitivities associated with ASD, and often use sensory integration therapy for both sensory and sensitivity difficulties with sensory processing. Lenses developed by Dr. Helen can also reduce visual distortion. Avoiding or tolerating adverse sensory experiences in adults, they can be greater opportunities to create a lifestyle that minimizes the risk of encountering specific complex sensory experiences. You will need to explain to others why you are perhaps choosing to engage in such eccentric avoidant behavior, but there will be greater with neurotypicals already now. Situations, most neurotypicals will not have experienced personally intensity of the pain and distress that you have experienced because of sympathy. If you make reference to the scraping sound of seeing nails down a blackboard, many people hate this. Many more experiences perceived unpleasantness to much more greater degree, and then there are often neurotypicals in the problem in ASD. Response to common daily experiences, they should elicit more compassion than the somewhat happens common. Just try to ignore it. The good news is that with maturity there can be a greater ability to temporarily enjoy experience. I love that I was just saying that with maturity you're gonna get better. Things get better. It gets better. Like, I get that a lot, but like, also, I don't get better. I mean, maybe I am. Maybe I finally am. Maybe things are slightly better I should write that down because I will forget, because ADHD brain. Okay. Tactile, visual, sensitive, can produce in some cases by choosing clothing carefully. The problem can be the uncomfortable feeling of fabric and skin. Seems you may also find that bright patterns and colours visually overstimulating. People who have ASD may prefer to choose subdued colours, often wear clothes that are all black. This also helps the problem of the colour coordination of clothing. However, a problem for women with ASD is but is particularly should be fashion conscious, while others involve very uncomfortable and impractical clothing that may be brightly coloured or highly patterned and may be more important to you than for comfortable rather than fashionable. Always. I've always bought bright clothing and then I wear black clothing, even though I think that I want bright, colourful, fun, happy clothing to make my mood better. Maybe that makes me worse. Revelation. I'm gonna make a change that hopefully make things better. Why do I always think that things are gonna be better if I make a change and then I am avoidant to change? Kath said it's fine. Alright. I will have experience personally intensity pain distress that just try to ignore it. I know, I do try to ignore it. I need to get out of my own head. My head is running. My body, what is that? It's neurotypical software on ASD hardware, because my brain still is trying to be neurotypical, but my brain physically is neurodiverse. I should make that a meme. I wonder if it already is. Maybe I've already seen it. Maybe considering having you a portable repair, it might be worth considering having with you a portable repair kit of alternative sensory experiences that neutralize specific sensory sensitivity. For example, having a set that experience olfactory sensation to somebody's body odor when using public transport as spray tissue with the odors of the scent inhalant as an antidote to obnoxious olfactory experience. The sensory repair kit could also include a good book or a small computer game console that could act as a temporary distraction. Specific sensory experiences are common characteristic of sensory sensitivity for those who have ASD is an aversion to fluorescent lights, which may appear to flicker, and downlights in ceilings that provide too intense to an alternative to ensure greater access to your natural but not too bright light, or to wear a baseball cap or visor indoors to stop the effect of downlight on visual perception. Strategies do not seem to work. Neurotypicals may assume that if you have repeated exposure to an unexpected experience, you will gradually habituate and it will be perceived as less intense. This may also believe that if this does not work, you should just try to ignore it. Neither strategy works for reducing the sensory. This is exactly why therapy doesn't work. Neurotypicals may assume that if you have repeated exposure to an unpleasant experience, you will gradually habituate to it and it will be perceived as less intense. I've been to so many therapists that have been, you should go to the mall. If you don't like going to the mall, you should go to the mall. You should go to the mall to continue going to the mall, to build up your tolerance to going to the mall, because it will get easier. But then, like, this year, it doesn't get easy. I just have a bad time every time. And then people will say, that wasn't as bad as last time. And I'm like, wasn't it? Wasn't it? Neither strategy works in reducing sensory sensitivity. It is an interesting characteristic of ASD that repeated experience of an adverse experience, desensitization, does not lead to habituation, and if an experience is particularly unpleasant, it is almost impossible to ignore. This is why I can't ignore the traffic. Because even though I'm being exposed to these traffic noises, it's still an unpleasant, what is it called? An unpleasant sensory sensitivity for me to hear that while doing this. Or hear it at all. I don't even need to be doing this if I can hear traffic while I'm reading or cooking or being in my room. I will stop and wait for it. What is that? Is that a street cleaner? Why is it going so slow? Anyway, I'm going to stop this video here because we're at the end of Living with Sensory Issues page. Experience. Yeah, it's just recommended reading lists now. Alright, so that was me reading a couple of chapters from Been There, Done That, Try This. I might continue reading this today because it it helps. I guess it helps. It turns out it inspires thought, and I'm addicted to learning about autism, and I think looking at it from Tony Atwood's good explanations is easier for me to understand and relate to myself than reading about somebody else's experiences of how they deal with autism. So in my experience of this book, the own voices is actually less relatable than the Tony Atwood voice. Interesting. That doesn't always happen. I think Tony Atwood is specifically very good at what he does, and very understanding and very eloquent, and of the same mindset about autism that I am. So that helps. Whereas some of the people in here who are giving their own lived experience is not helpful, because their lives are so incredibly different to me. The way that they understand what's going on within themselves is different to what I understand within myself. And once you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. It's not a shared experience, even though it kind of is. I've never understood that quote, because why would they have a diagnostic for it if it's that different? Why would there be communities of autistic people sharing their shared stories if we're not somewhat the same? Birds of the feather flock together until the cat comes. Alright, okay, alright, okay, thank you so much. That quote I just said wasn't relevant. It's just popped into my mind and I had to say it. Alright, okay. It's like, I'll burn that bridge when I get to it. Only real. Also, great minds think alike, but fools seldom differ. I don't know why I thought of these idioms now, but anyway, thank you so much. I hope that this has been relaxing, insightful, something helpful maybe. I don't know. But now I want to buy all of the books on autism, and I have zero monies. I don't want to take them out of the library because then I can't highlight them. It's like this book